Привет всем! This is an intermediate tutorial on pronunciation. Before you watch this video, it's good to be comfortable with the basics of hard and soft consonants. If you'd like a review, you might want to watch these other videos first. So once I was helping a Russian friend with her English pronunciation, and I was surprised when one of the more difficult words for her was not something like 3/5, it was ni. Just that, ni. Not because of the spelling, but because of the pronunciation. She told me that she'd hurt her knee. I stopped her and said, well, we don't really have that soft ny sound in English. So I asked her to bring her tongue down, make it less palatalized. So then she said she'd hurt her knee. Well, the consonant was better, but now the vowel wasn't right. It sounded more like the Russian u. So when she tried to say an e sound after a non-palatalized n, more like the Russian hard n, she couldn't quite get it. There's actually a good reason for that, and it tells us something interesting about the Russian sound system. Let's think for a minute about when we hear these sounds. We know that a word can start with e.
Игла, искра, играть.
And we also hear this sound after a soft consonant.
Сила, лис, щи.
This sound, on the other hand, is heard only after hard consonants.
Был, ты, лыс.
So there's no overlap. It's always one or the other. The e sound can begin a word or follow a soft consonant, but you'll only hear u after a hard consonant. In a sense, we could think of e and u as being variants of a single sound. It may not seem that way since we do normally spell them with different letters, but let's think about this for a minute. Listen to the first sound in this name.
Иван, Иван.
What happens when one word ends in a hard consonant and the next word begins with the letter E? I mean, we were just saying that the sound E never follows a hard consonant, right? Well, let's listen carefully for what happens when the letter E comes right after a hard consonant at the end of the preceding word.
От Ивана, от Ивана. Сон Ивана, сон Ивана.
We hear the same thing in these examples.
С Игорем. В игре. В их доме.
Hear the difference. In natural connected speech, where one word flows into the next, we'll normally hear
И.
even if it's spelled with the letter E. Let's listen again.
Иван. От Ивана. Сон Ивана. С Игорем. В игре. В их доме.
Even though we don't change the spelling in these examples, that first vowel in the second word of each pair is pronounced more like U, because in the natural flow of speech, it follows the hard consonant at the end of the preceding word. This explains a few other things too. Now we can understand why the spelling in certain pairs of verbs can change a little when you add a prefix that ends in a hard consonant. So we have the imperfective
Играть.
perfective
Сыграть.
with U. When we add a prefix like this, the spelling actually does reflect the way the basic vowel sound is pronounced when it follows a hard consonant. Now it makes sense that we hear U in words like
Жить. Пиши. Цирк.
these three consonants are unusual in that they're always hard, never soft. We do spell these words with the letter E because of the 7-letter spelling rule, but when you listen carefully, you'll realize that words like
Шил.
and
Был.
do rhyme because we hear U, not E, after a hard consonant. This also explains why a patronymic might be spelled like this to reflect the way it sounds in quick speech, Ivanovic. This is really a shortened form of Ivanovic, but you may have noticed that in quick speech or common words, V has a tendency to disappear when it's between vowels, and patronymics are so common that this whole syllable drops out. That would leave us with an E sound after the hard N. But as we've seen, that just won't work in Russian. So the E of each changes, Ivanych, and we see this kind of spelling pronunciation, a little like you might see going to spelled out like this in English, reflecting the informal pronunciation gana. By the way, this is a classic children's poem by Danil Harms, and you really should look it up on YouTube and hear the whole thing. You can listen for a couple of examples of just what we've been talking about in these two lines, first as read by 13-year-old Артём Долгобородов.
Вот и дедушка пришел, вот и бабушка пришла.
and then in a recording by Хармс himself.
Вот и дедушка пришел, вот и бабушка пришла.
I should also mention that this is a strong tendency that happens in the flow of speech. For example, вот и мы. But if there's a pause, then that letter E at the beginning of a word will still sound like E. Вот. И мы сказали. There's a great example here in 2 readings of the last line of a poem by Бэлла Ахмадулина. Listen carefully to how the word их is pronounced, and see if you can hear the difference.
И нарушает их порядок. И нарушает их порядок.
In the first reading by Anna Чиповская, the last line is read without a pause, and we hear нарушает их порядок. But the second reader, Айнур Ниязова, chooses to pause in the middle of the line, so there's no need for that hard t to influence the following vowel, and ich sounds just like it's spelled. By the way, it's a wonderful poem, and it's worth listening to both readings in their entirety, not just for the sake of a phonetics lesson. Check the comments for links to all of the readings in this video. Summing up. The sound E can follow a soft consonant or begin a word after a pause. But in the flow of natural speech, the sound E does not directly follow a hard consonant. So, when a word ending in a hard consonant is followed by one that starts with the letter E, that E will generally be pronounced as U.
Сон Ивана.
And when we add a prefix that ends in a hard consonant to a verb that starts with the letter E, we can even see that shift in spellings like this.
Сыграть.
The sounds R, Sh, and Ts are always hard, so when the letter E follows them, it's pronounced like U.
Жить. Шил. Цирк.